I'm Alexander Flor. I represent the so-called Los Baños School of Environmental Communication. Environmental communication for us started during the late 80s and early 90s in our university town here in the Philippines called the University of the Philippines at Los Baños, where we have a very strong school of environmental science and management. We're actually a cow college. You know, we were established as a land grant college in the early 1900s when we were still a colony of the United States. So we're pretty strong in forestry and agriculture. We're located beside a lake also, not to mention a volcanic or a dormant volcano. And environmental communication for us is, a lived experience. Okay. I'm currently professor and dean of the Faculty of Information and Communication Studies. I wrote a book titled Cultural Vehicles of Environmental Communication in 1994, published by Dalhousie University of Canada and the University of the Philippines. And in 2002, we published a textbook called Environmental Communications. Well, I have to begin with our concept of environmental communication, which is not how it is ordinarily defined in most academic institutions, even in communities of practice. Environmental communication for us, it's based on so-called deep ecology, this concept of deep ecology, where we assume that any organism, any system, any ecosystem for that matter, they need to perform three critical functions in order to survive. The first one is exchange of materials between organisms and the environment. That's one. Secondly is the exchange of energy between organisms and its environment. And the third critical function is the exchange of information between organisms and its environment. It's this third critical function that is not really addressed by current ecological discourse. And this is where we come in. Environmental communication for us is not just using media to communicate environmental messages or climate themes or things that would prompt climate action. For us, it is much deeper than that. It's the environment communicating with us, and we serve as the agents of communication. Since the environment or the climate per se does not really communicate, does it? Meaning the way we know it. They would be the source of things such as biosignals, and others. And these knowledge sometimes are embedded in indigenous knowledge systems or local knowledge. We are agents in this exchange of information, which we add a dimension of meaning and make it environmental communication. Okay, so with that, I believe that we should consider the climate itself, the environment or climate itself, as a source in this communication process. And man would be the agent. Man would also be the receiver, and he would be the actor. Okay, but so we have to look out for things such as biosignals. We also have to look into local and indigenous knowledge, where some of these messages are embedded. And much of our early work in environmental communication dealt with the cultural dimension of it. Our first publication was actually co-published by Dalhousie University in Canada and the University of the Philippines. The theme was really cultural vehicles in environmental communication. Okay. Also, there is a need for systematization of this local knowledge and this indigenous knowledge, and make generous use of culture as a platform for promoting climate action. And hence, we make use of, popular forms such as songs, theater, and so on. We're not just defining this as a communication campaign on environmental themes. We really think of communication for climate action as championing, advocacy, and so on. Top three tips. First, we have to be climate communicators would have to be sensitive to biosignals. They ought to consider biosignals as the climate communicating to them, revealing certain, revealing certain messages or certain developments, if you will, that could happen. Biosignals may be something as simple as how certain animals behave in certain situations. They appear to be more sensitive to changes in the climate than we are. Okay. Now, that would be my first tip. My second tip would be we have to consider indigenous and local knowledge as legitimate sources of climate information. Okay. Now, indigenous knowledge or local knowledge, this has been building up through the ages. And I would think that we could, it would be a great store of knowledge for us to have informed climate action. Okay, that would be my second tip. My third tip is to make as generous use of culture as a platform in or cultural forms as means or media in promoting climate action. The use of stories, for instance, stories that may even seem to be fantastical or how do we say it? Myths, for instance, they would strike a chord to communities that would be involved in climate action. The use of songs are very effective. Music plus poetry, that would be very effective vehicles for climate communication, and so is theater. Recently, there has been a lot of discourse regarding social media. Well, social media has its own dysfunctions, and at times the message itself doesn't manifest in the best way possible. That's a very kind way of putting it. Okay, so those are my three tips for communication for climate action.